Outside of the killer on the loose, teenagers get brutally picked off one by one format, the haunted house genre is right up there with some of the best scary movies that film fans have been cursed with over the decades. Out and out classics like 1963's The Haunting, 1980's The Shining, through to more modern fare such as 2001's The Others, 2007's Paranormal Activity and 2013's The Conjuring, and many others, are all deserving of their praise. But there is one film that's begun to sneak back into many greatest horror movie lists, one that often gets overlooked. Hi, I'm Stephen at Real Classic Film Reviews. If you're a fan of classic film, including classic horror and cult classics, then you've clicked on the right video. Please consider subscribing to the channel and let me know in the comments which scary movies are some of your favourites. Based on the supposedly true story of a haunting that occurred in Denver, Colorado in the 60s, 1980's The Changeling begins with a truly shocking scene. Moving his stalled car to the side of the road, George C. Scott watches in horror as a truck comes along and kills his wife and daughter in one fell swoop. After the film's opening horrendous trauma, Scott decides to leave New York and head to Seattle, where he has a position waiting as a professor of music at the university there. Whilst there, he rents an obviously spooky as hell grand old house so he can spend his entire time grieving and composing his music alone. And well, surprise surprise, it turns out there really is something spooky about this big old house. It all begins with the usual horror movie plot devices: banging noises in the night, pianos that play themselves, and before you can say, don't go poking around in that old dark house, he's gone and discovered a hidden stairway to a cobweb covered room. In this room he finds the creepiest old-fashioned wheelchair ever, and an old book featuring someone's initials. At this point, like anyone with any sense would do, he packs his bags, leaves the house and moves to Hawaii to live happily ever after. But not really. Before long, Scott is forced into having to discover if the house truly is haunted. So he invites a friend from the local historical society round, as well as some spiritual mediums to hold a seance. And they never end well.
Joseph, did you die in this house?
The seance scene is the crazy, creepy turning point in the movie, and the aftermath even worse, as the tape recorder Scott used to document the seance manages to pick up some otherworldly sounds and voices. By use of flashback, the scene features a breathless incident of child cruelty that goes some way towards explaining the origin of the haunting.
Will you tell us why you are not at rest?
My father!
Joseph, did you die in this house?
My room.
How did you die?
It transpires that in 1907, a young boy named Joseph was drowned in his bathtub by his own father. However, this is only one piece of the film's overall puzzle. General Patton himself, George C. Scott, ditches his usual masculine bravado and plays the role of John Russell, a quiet, vulnerable and broken man. Interestingly, his real-life wife, Trish Van Devere, plays the local historian who helps him out. Directed by Peter Medak, who also made the 1990 film The Craze, as well as a multitude of television, everything from The Persuaders and The Professionals in the 70s, up to more recent shows such as Breaking Bad and Hannibal. Here he crafts more of a psychological drama than an out-and-out horror. In fact, the film is really more about the solving of a historical mystery, one that just happens to have a ghost be the catalyst that pushes Scott into his investigations. But that's not to say The Changeling doesn't generate real fear, doing so effectively via simple moments, a spooky tune from a music box, or the shiver-inducing unexpected arrival of a child's fall, helped along by a soundtrack that jumps between low strings and jump scare madness. The house itself is almost a star character, oozing atmosphere, full of whispers and creaking doors. Incidentally, the house featured never actually existed, it being a movie magic mixture of a fake Victorian Gothic facade and a clever collection of sets. Although great, the film isn't perfect. The central mystery behind the haunting is arrived at a little bit too early in the plot, and watching it back, I realised I'd totally forgotten about an ill-judged side plot involving the pursuit and investigation of an old senator, who may or may not be involved in a 70-year-old tragedy. These scenes slow the film at a time when it should be building towards its finale. However, none of that detracts from the fact that this is one of cinema's great haunted house stories, a classic with some family drama and murder mystery elements mixed in. If you've never seen it, please check it out, and if you have, then maybe it's time for a revisit. Just make sure you watch it with the lights out.